Okay, welcome to Wheel Throwing for Absolute Beginners. We're going to be a small group tonight, but that's great. That just means you get more information, more specialized information. So I'm excited that you're here. I see some people are putting some things in the chat. So let me see. Julia says that she's from Mississippi and then she started the wheel in February. That's so exciting. I think, yeah, starting with hand building is such a great way to get introduced to clay. And actually, when I took pottery in college, we had to take hand building first because they didn't want to get all those excited wheel people in there. They wanted to make them kind of earn it. But I think I learned a lot with hand building before getting into the wheel class. There are a few things I wanted to share with you. One is that I have a Facebook group, which you should have been invited to already via email. In my introduction, this is who I am email. And at the bottom, there's a little link to join the Facebook group. And in there, it's just a very safe space for super beginners. And you basically get access to me anytime you have a question. So that's one thing. Joe from the UK just started last month. That's exciting. Monica is in California and she says, these are the best. I'm so excited that Monica's been bringing such great energy. Thank you, Monica, for saying hey. I hope I'm saying this right. Micah from Toronto, totally new, no experience yet. Okay, you just want to learn. I love that. That's so great. So I'm honored to be your first exposure or your 100th exposure. So I'm gonna just run through the whole process of throwing a cylinder, and if we have time, we could do another shape, and depending on how people are feeling. And I will send this out to everybody via email for replay. And then if you come into the Facebook group, I have all of my past beginner workshops banked in there. And so you can just watch them all, and they're all just slightly different, but basically the same information. I'm going to give the same information over and over again. I'm going to share with you a couple of links. You can copy and paste them for later. You don't need to sign up for any of these now. You can decide at any point. There's two other workshops that I do that I deliver via email. One is getting started on the pottery wheel, which is basically what you're seeing here, plus a PDF to help guide you if you're more of a, you need it concrete and printed out kind of person. And then if you're feeling a little bit more advanced, you can take the cylinder challenge, which is a series of 3 emails that are 3 very deceivingly simple exercises that will help you improve your cylinders. And even if you're an ultra beginner, it's really good to just keep these things in mind. Not that you need to accomplish them, but they're really good to know about. And then I have a list of suggested supplies and tools. I'm creating a class right now, and in that class, I had to come up with a supply list. And so I just figured it was worth sharing, just having that all in one place. And there's a book list in there too. So anyway, but what's not on the list is mud tools, which I will be using tonight. 2 of my favorite mud tools are these ribs. And so anyway, I just like for people to know that mud tools are best received from the company because there are fakes out there. So anyway, we're just going to go ahead and get started. Unless anybody has any specific questions, I'm just going to jump right into it. I will say that I am going to throw on a bat tonight. And I'm probably going to throw 2 cylinders, but I'm going to throw in a bat, and I'm going to show you how to attach a bat. You don't need to attach a bat. So I'll do that second. We'll worry about the most important thing first, which is throwing the cylinder. But you don't need a bat, but it is really good to know how to attach a bat, especially when people in the beginning like to get excited about throwing, and then they end up inevitably trying to throw a plate, and a plate needs a bat. It's just the way it is. So a bat is just a board that gets attached to your wheel head, and I am putting that on now, but I'm not showing you because I don't want you to get overwhelmed, but I will show you later what it looks like. So I'm going to change my point of view so that you can see my wheel. Okay, so Hopefully that is good. And please pop in the chat if you have any questions. I'm going to keep my eyes peeled. I may miss it initially, and you're welcome to just come off mute and say it out loud. That's fine too. But I want you to notice, pretend like this bat isn't here, but I want you to notice the wheel is dry and the clay is not wet. So I'm just going to slap it down as close to the middle as I can get it. And I just want to note that I start with 1 pound of clay and I weigh that clay out. You can use any kind of kitchen scale. I think that's a worthy investment. There's some very affordable kitchen scales out there. It's really good to know how much you can do, what you can do with a pound, and then to do that on repeat. And then you'll get some kind of idea and muscle memory of what you're capable of accomplishing with 1 pound. Also, I would say this is like a good size for a mug. So that's just usually where I go first when I'm throwing a cylinder, is I just think about mug shapes. So yeah, so here is my wheel. And the first thing I like to do is slap it down. And if I can't get it directly on center, I did actually get it pretty close to center. Don't lift it up, just push and smush a little bit closer to the middle. And in the beginning, I'm always trying to smush down. And that will just keep everything attached, and trying to, you know, if I push straight across, then it might pop up. So I'm just trying to keep it, everything going down towards the middle. All right, so my wheel's a little messy. You're going to excuse my mess. But I want to first just note that all wheels go different speeds, and it's actually very difficult on camera to tell how fast I'm going. But what I like to do is, in the beginning, I'm going to, there's 3 different stages to this process. There is centering, there is opening, and there's pulling up the walls. And the most time you're going to spend is on centering. And if you don't get on center and you decide to move through those steps, it's fine. It just means that things might get a little wonky. So if you think you're on center and you go to open and things get crazy, then you know, maybe I wasn't on center. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about being on center and what that means and what that looks like and how to get there. So being on center. And then the other thing is centering happens in 3 parts. We're going to cone up and we're going to cone down. We're going to do that 2 times, but that's not going to get us on center. That's just going to get us into the ballpark. We're going to organize. We're trying to organize our clay particles. And first step in that and centering is coning up and coning down twice. After that, we're going to do a little baby cone up and a little baby cone down. We're going to do that until we feel like we're getting really close, and then we're going to hug it in. So those are the 3 steps at centering that I'm going to talk about. I suggest using warm water, especially if you're still experiencing cooler temperatures. And there's no reason to stress out our wrists any more than we need to. So let's get back to this business. I've slapped it down on the middle. Again, please let me know if you have questions or if something is not clear, because sometimes when you say the same thing 45 million times, you forget to say, you know, one piece of it that's super important. So I'm going to get my wheel going as fast as possible, not because I'm going to use it at this top speed, but I just like to know, like, what's the top speed? Every wheel is different. And if you work in a community studio and you end up on a different wheel every time, it's just really good to know how fast does this thing go. And then I would say my centering speed is about 2/3 of full speed. So I don't need to be going full speed, full throttle in order to get on center. In fact, sometimes it can be a little bit of a waste to be going that fast. But as I go through my process, I'm going to be like centering at, you know, basically the fastest that I will be going, I will be centering, and then I'm going to open and I'm going to slow it down by about half. And then as I pull things up, I'm going to slow down even more. So there is just a constant slowing down as we go through these steps. So coning up. I want everybody to take a minute and just everything I'm about to say is all for right-handed people. And so I'm sorry to my left-handed folks, but you're going to have to do that thing in your head that you've had to do your whole life. Just switch everything to lefty. But if you're a right-handed person, your wheel is going to be going counterclockwise. That's just the way it is. And we're always going to be, well, for centering, it's a little different, but we'll talk about pulling up is going to be a very specific side of the wheel. So all my right-handed people, I want you to take your left hand and raise it up. And remember when you used to work in food service. So I want you to pretend like you're holding a tray. You can go ahead and even like grab something, like we're in, we're actually going to hold it back. Okay. That's how flat my hand should be. And then I'm just going to take that elbow, tuck it into my side. And then I want you to notice, that is the angle that I'm going to have with my hand. And I want you to notice that because of the angle where my hand meets my body, that hand ends up hitting around 7 o'clock. So this technique is called 7 and 2. And so I'm just going to like this part of my hand is the part of my hand that's the strongest. A lot of times people want to get their whole hand involved, their fingers, but really, to be honest, the amount of pressure that I can put on the clay with just this amount of my hand, this part of my hand is connected to this part of my arm, and that elbow is tucked into my side. So I just want to just make note at 7 o'clock, I've got this flat hand and sort of relaxed, and I'm pushing not across, but down and towards the center. So that's what my left hand is doing. I'm just breaking everything down to like the smallest minutia, and across from my hand from 7 o'clock is 2 o'clock right here. And that's where my right hand is going to come in. And similarly, I don't really want to use my fingers. I want to use this part of my hand that's super strong. And I'm just going to lean in with my left hand and gently scoop my hands together until I get a cone shape and come up super slowly. So that's what it looks like again. So I want you to notice it looks like my fingers are super involved, but they're actually not. This is my right hand. This is my 2 o'clock hand, and my left hand is at 7. So that is 1 cone up. All right. Monica says the tray example helps so much. I'm so glad. So now I'm going to cone down. I've coned up 1 time. Now I'm going to cone down. My right hand in this situation is in charge of the top. And my left hand is still only in charge of the outside. I want you to think of them as having very specific jobs, very specific duties. So my right hand is going to push down on the top, but I want you to notice that I'm not pushing down on the whole top. I'm just pushing down on half of the top. And the reason is that this wheel is spinning. I don't need to touch the whole top. So I'm going to let the wheel do its job. And I want you to notice that it creates this little mushroom shape, right? From pushing down on the top. My right hand makes this little mushroom shape when it pushes down. My left hand is going to gently support and coax that clay back into the mound. It's not pushing very hard at all. I would say like on a scale 1 to 10, my top hand is pushing like, I don't know, a 5. My left hand is supporting and pushing in at like a 2 maybe. Okay, so I've coned up and I've coned down 1 time. I know that's like painfully slow process, coning up, coning down. So already things are looking a little bit more organized, but we're not there quite yet. So I'm going to do it 1 more time. And what I'm doing, this is called wheel wedging. And what it does is it cycles the clay particles in an organized fashion, and it can help you moisten the clay. It can help organize the particles and make them easier to open when you're easier to center and easier to open when you're on center. And, there's lots of benefits to wheel wedging. Now, in our case, we only have 1 pound of clay. 2 times of coning up and down might be a bit much. And as you get better, you might not need to do it twice. You might only need to do it once, and you might not even want to do it at all, but this is the way we learn in the beginning. So I'm taking my left hand on the outside, same position, flat hand that comes down, and I'm pushing down and at an angle, like 45-degree angle to the center, pushing down from the outside of my left hand. My left hand is my outside hand. My right hand is going to come across from it and put pressure across from it. And I'm gently squeezing the clay up. One thing I notice is that people tend to try at this point, stop in the middle, or they try to grab the whole, bit of clay, and they'll end up with a big chunk of clay in their hands. So just try to keep your hands moving up so you can get that cone shape. So I've got a right hand on top, and I'm going to press down, and I've got, my right hand is in charge of the top. And I want you to notice that I'm moving very slowly. In the second pot, I'm going to go a little bit quicker, and you can see the fluidity of these motions. But basically, my right hand is pushing down and my left hand is being a support. And I want you to also, one thing that you probably have noticed is that about every 30 seconds or so, I pause and I get water. I rinse my hands off in this water. And I just have this little thing of water, but I want you to know that I just rinse my hands all the way up to my wrist. I'm not like bringing buckets of water to the wheel. So that's something to think about. Another thing to think about is every time I do something, when I pull my hands away, instead of being like, oh, I need water, and going quickly, now you can see things are like a little bit off. I'm going to pause, exhale, and gently release so that I can come get water and then come back to the wheel. Okay, so we did coning up and we did coning down. We did that twice. It's fair game for any questions. If anybody has any questions about coning up and coning down, it's really just a way to organize the clay. So I'm going to go ahead and do my little baby cone up and my baby cone down. And I want you to still keep your same hands, have the same jobs. The left hand is my outside hand. And for me, it lives at 7. And my right hand is my top hand. And for me, it is touching my left hand gently. And a lot of times people try to lock these hands really hard in, but I want you to just come to this in a really relaxed way and try not to put too much aggressive pressure on it. But I do want you to be firm in your pressure. So I've got this left hand, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a baby cone up. This is what that looks like to me. Baby cone up. And then I'm going to do a baby cone down. Okay. While supporting on the outside. So that's a baby cone up and a baby cone down. Usually I would do that a couple of times. I come up, I come down, I come up, I come down. And this way I really get a sense of like what's going on in this clay? Is it organized? Is it wet? Is it dry? Like what's happening? And then what I'm doing now instinctively without explaining it is something I call hug it in, which means I'm putting equal pressure on the outside as I am on the top. So I am squeezing my hands together gently. And then when I feel like it's on center, I'm going to just gently pull away slowly, like so. And so that piece right here is on center. Now, how do I know it's on center? Well, when I look at it, I don't see a wobble. But more importantly, I want you to just take a minute. The thing that is the most on center here is my spinning wheel. So a lot of times I'll tell people to close their eyes and just touch the wheel, and then close their eyes and then touch your clay. And when you do that, if you feel an internal like boom, 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 then you know you have to maybe do a baby cone up and a baby cone down and a hug it in. You take it back. If things are really wild, like things are really thrown off, then you can cone all the way up and cone all the way down just to get things kind of organized and settled into a like some semblance of order. But usually after 2 times, you're good. All right, so that was coning up and coning down. This is centered. This is centered. We're past centered. We're moving on to opening. So I'm still staying the same speed, which I'm saying is 2/3 of my wheel's top speed. And I'm going to open, and there are lots of ways to open, and your opening technique can change as you get more advanced. But this is just the way that I teach beginners to open because it allows for the most control and the least amount of confusion about what a proper opening should look like. I always have my elbows, you can see sort of at the top of the screen, are tucked into my side, leaning. My hands are touching each other. And for this motion, I'm really going to pick one finger on my dominant hand, and I'm going to start on the outside and just very gently creep. It's a creeper move. I'm just going to creep into what I think is the center. Now, when I think I'm fairly close to center or just outside of center, I'm going to press down. And I want you to notice that I'm not really pressing so far down that it's like a tunnel. I'm not drilling a hole here, but I am opening at a slight angle so I can see what's happening. And if you notice, I've got my helper hand here and I've got my elbows tucked into my side. As the second I open, that clay that I expose is a little bit dry. And what can happen is it can start to tug at your finger. So I'm going to immediately just go ahead and get a little water on my finger, and I'm going to keep pressing down. And what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to get about a 1/4 inch from this wheel head. I stop the wheel, which I don't ever usually do, but sometimes it's helpful to stop the wheel and be able to tell how high up this is from there. In general, I would say for beginners, sometimes it's hard to like, I usually want you to pick a wheel speed and just get your foot off that pedal, because sometimes we just start stopping and starting and going fast and going slow. So just pick your speed and get your foot off of there. But I don't want to go all the way to the wheel head, so I had to check. So the first thing in opening is dropping the hole. So I'm dropping the hole. I'm getting about a 1/4 inch from the wheel head, and then I'm going to stop. Okay. So now I have established how deep this thing goes, how far down it goes. I now need to decide how wide, because if I want this thing to be a cup, then I'm going to want something a little bit wider than this. It's not going to magically change at any point. Like, this is when I deal with that. This is when I make that decision. This is the time. So I'm going to take my finger and create like a little bit of a hook or like a stiff finger. And I've got my helper hand here, and I'm going to pull towards me. And you might notice that at some point it gets a little dry. And so I'm going to pause, gently pull away, and then get a little more water, and then open further. And the width of this is that's the width my cup is going to be. It doesn't change very much as the process goes along. So this is it. Another thing that doesn't change very much is what's happening in the bottom of my cup. So right now is the best time for me I'm going to take my sponge and my finger, and I'm just going to smooth it out so it's like nice and smooth. And, even for me, like, this is not something I would tell a beginner to do, but I usually like to make it really nice with a rib, but we can talk about that another day. But your finger, a sponge, a rib, whatever you feel comfortable with, and you're just tending to the bottom, because this is the best access we're going to have to the bottom. Okay, so I have dropped the hole. I have established how wide of a bottom. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slow this wheel down by about half, because now it's time to pull up. And I want you to know that right now when I opened, you can see it's kind of bulging out a little bit here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to very gently kind of push that bulge back in. And you'll notice that I've got my elbow tucked and I've got my helper hand, but I just want to like set myself up for pulling up in a way that's going to be smooth. Okay, so I'm going to pull up, and to do that, I am right-handed. My wheel is going counterclockwise. Everything that I do from here on out happens on the right-hand side. No question, a non-negotiable for me. Now, I know a lot of people have other ways of doing things, and that's fine. I just will always default to this. There's some good reasons for that, which we can talk about some other time, but I'm going to put one finger on the outside, one finger on the inside, and I'm going to squeeze the clay very gently, slightly more aggressively on the first time, but we'll talk about that. But I'm going to gently squeeze the clay, and I'm going to come up the pot, and I'm going to count down from 10 Mississippi. And it's really annoying and it's really childish, but I will tell you that if you do this for your first pull, when you're first learning how to throw, you're going to save yourself. What a lot of people tend to do is they tend to go boop, 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 and they don't get any work done. And so what I want us to do is just slow down our hand movements. And so that nothing like a good countdown with some Mississippis to slow us down. So I'm going to start with a 10 pressure at the bottom, and I'm going to decrease that to a number 1 pressure at the top. And by the time I get to the top, my fingers will be like a feather, like a whisper, like a vague, barely touching presence. If the clay were to disappear during my pull, my fingers would be touching. Now I'm going to throw a little bit of a wrench into the works because I throw with a sponge. So I just have always thrown with a sponge, but I want you to know that this sponge it's a throwing sponge, but it is just an extension of my finger. My finger, if my clay were to disappear and the sponge were to disappear, my fingers would be touching. So it just softens the pressure from my finger, allows me to be a little bit more aggressive. So before I do my first pull, the last thing I will say is that my inside finger is like a wall. It's receiving the pressure. It is very difficult to modulate pressure from both sides. So I mostly modulate the pressure from the right-hand side, which is my outside hand. Okay. All of this is happening in this little quadrant, which I refer to as between 3 and 6. I probably work somewhere around 4:30. So I'm going to do my first pull. And if you have any questions about anything I've said so far, I will check the chat. I'm going to count down from 10 Mississippi. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm going to pause at the top, and then I'm barely touching and I remove my fingers. Now you'll notice that it looked like my thumb was doing something. My thumb was just being supportive, a supportive friend. Any other fingers, they were not involved. It was just these 2 fingers that did the pushing, did the pull. And pull is a bad word because we're not really pulling, so it's not a very good descriptor. But I will say at this point, after each pull, I take my left hand and I let the clay very gently flow through. And then I either use my finger or my sponge to clean up and compress the lip. If I don't compress the lip, sometimes the lip gets a little wet and raggedy looking. So that's that. So I'm going to do another pull. I don't see any questions. All right. We're doing okay. Everybody all right? I hope so. Okay. So starting all the way at the bottom, I'm not going to count down out loud, but you know what's happening in my head. And I will say that with this pull, I want to be more mindful of the difference in thickness. So I will be using more pressure at the bottom, and I will be decreasing as I come up gradually. But if I get to a thin spot, I'm not going to keep pushing. I'm going to be mindful of how thick my pot is. So we're starting at a 10 pressure. And that was a little bit longer than 10 Mississippis. And I just went right into my lip compression when I was done, if you notice that. So that was my second pull. Now you're not going to get that much work done when you do yours. It's going to be a little bit harder, but one thing to keep in mind is if everything feels like uneven at the top, it could be that you're pulling too aggressively. So you might need to lessen your pressure. If it feels like you're not getting any work done and this thing isn't getting taller at all, it might be that you need to be a little bit more aggressive. So I'm going to do one more pull. All right, last thing I'm going to say about the pull, well, maybe not. We can't promise anything. But an important thing is, I forget. What was I going to say? Something so important. Oh, that when I'm pulling up, I am not doing any shaping. Shaping is separate. It's a separate step, and it happens after I establish my thin, even walls. And I will say right now, I'm just going to go in and feel how thick things are because, okay, this is pretty good. And I got to show you how to get the extra clay up off the bottom. So we're just going to call this good. But this is what I would call a shaping pull. Like I'm just trying to smooth things out. I'm trying to make it nice and uniform. And we'll talk more about different, like how to create different shapes. One thing I can tell you is that whichever finger is on top, that's the direction your clay is going to go. So if I want a bowl, then I would want my inside finger to be on top, because if I push out from the inside and my inside finger is on top, you can see it's starting to go splay out that way, right? It gets wider. If I want it to go in, I'm going to get my outside finger on top. And so that's just the beginning of shaping. So if you're pulling cylinders and you're having a hard time, you're ending up with bowls, just remember that the finger that is on top that's what ends up the direction that thing is going to grow. In general, our fingers should be directly across from each other, but usually one finger is scooting ahead of the line. And, that usually is the cause of any kind of shaping difficulties, or if you're looking for a cylinder, but you're unable to get a cylinder, that's usually why. Okay, now I'm going to remove the scary clay. Monica says, when I try to move the clay from the bottom and get that little ring of clay to move up, I oftentimes end up with a bunch of clay in my sponge. Yes. Instead of it moving up. Yes, I know this. I've seen this happen. I've done this. And creating a taller wall. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. Am I applying too much pressure? Yes. And I think what happens is with the sponge, it's not only too much pressure, but it's too much concentrated pressure, Monica. But also I will say, when you're at the bottom, there's this little bit of time where you're sort of like, this hand is lower than this hand because there's a foot there, right? So my inside finger is slightly above. And I'm trying to get this little wave started. And there it is. You can see it starting right there. Now I'm going to try to ride that wave up. And probably what's happening is you're pushing too hard into that wave with too much pressure. I will say that is one thing that a sponge on my finger helps, because it kind of distributes that pressure in a way that it keeps that from happening. So that is a completely, you're doing the right things because you're having the right problems. These are intermediate problems for sure. So let's go ahead and trim this extra clay off. I've got this tool. This is just called a wooden tool. It has no fancy name. And I am trying to get, there is just like a little bit of extra clay here, starting about here. And I would say on most other people in beginner pots, there's a lot more to deal with. So it's really good to know how to deal with it. So I've got the chiseled end facing my pot. I'm holding this like a pencil. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the silhouette of my pot. And then I'm just going to start to draw down straight into this wheel head. So I'm going to do that. And I want you to know that you don't have to go fast. You can take your sweet time and come down, and you don't have to get a lot taken off. You can just do a little bit at first if it's really scary to you. So I'm just trying to go straight into the bottom, trying to go straight down. And so that's taken off that, what we call scary clay. But to be honest, like, this isn't very much. This is not a very good example because I threw it kind of thin. And I just want you to just be aware of like, that's how you get that off. I'm going to wire this off, and I'm going to lift it up with my hands because that is something we should all know how to do. But then I'm going to put it down and I'm going to show you another way to get it off, because a lot of times as beginners, we end up with these little pots that we can't actually move. So I would put a board here to transfer to, and I'm going to pretend like I have a board. And I'm just going to put it right here. So now you know it's going somewhere. And now I have dried my hands, and I have to wire it off first though, right? I'm going to take my sponge wherever it went. And I'm going to plop a little bit of water down, and I'm going to pull my wire straight through. And I usually like to push down and pull towards myself. Okay. So that allows a bead of water to end up underneath my pot. I'm going to dry my hands really well. And I'm going to come to this thing with like a claw hand. So I'm not trying to smush it, but I am trying to be sort of like create a cage around it. And I'm just going to turn it so that I can loosen it from its and move it over. Okay, so that's how I do that. Now, you guys get that, right? It sort of catches your fingers. Now, once I transfer it, it might be a little misshapen. I don't want you to try and fix it now because it's just going to get worse. You want to wait until you're right before you're going to trim it. And then usually you can just pop it back into shape and it's fine. But one thing I think is very helpful is these are very inexpensive. They're called pot lifters. And I think for the beginning potter, they can really get you out of some jams. Okay. And I am all about being a purist. No, I'm not. But I do value some real, like, DIY things. Like I don't use a Giffen grip to trim, but I don't think there's any shame in a pot lifter game because it's just good to have an extra little tool around. Okay. So I've got to wet my pot lifters. Wet, wet, wet. And then the thing about pot lifters is I need to keep them flat with the wheel head and wiggle them in. And then I need to slide and lift. And so that can save some pots that might not otherwise have made it. So then once I'm on my board with my pot lifters, the tendency is to lift up, but I don't want to do that. I want to actually push down and pull away. So I just think that pot lifters are just a great thing to have in a beginner studio. You might never need them after the first year or so, but they might actually be that might be the difference between getting a pot and not getting a pot. I will go ahead and cut this open so that we can see it and slice, slice, slice. And this is also good to do, is just inspect your cylinders and see what you get, see how thin and even you can get things. And remember that you can always make another. And since I want to recycle this soon, I'm going to do like a little trick that I learned from Tim C, which is like, just make these little rainbows. And while you're working in the studio, if you make these little rainbows, you can just let the clay will dry out, and then you can wedge it up and reuse it to make more practice pots. So there's my rainbow. And now I'm going to show you how to put a bat on. This is a small square bat, but it doesn't really matter what kind of bat it is. This works for any bat. There are these bat fabric bat, like, I don't know what they're called, bat mate or whatever. They like will go down on the wheel head and keep your bat from shimmying around. And, you know, I probably should just go ahead and order one on Amazon, but I have not done that yet. And so I'm just going to show you what, you know, before they invented those fabric bat things, like this is what we did in the olden days, is we just use clay. So I'm going to make sure my wheel is not wet, which it sort of is pretty wet. And got my towel here, because clay and water means that it won't stick. So I'm going to show you how to attach a bat. So I'm just going to take like a tiny little pinch of clay and I'm going to smear it across. And this just means that it gives my bat something to hold on to. And if these bat pins are loose, or if these holes are worn out, which sometimes happens, or just the bat is warped and it needs a little bit of help. So that's how I attach a bat. And then maybe next time I'll have my little handy bat fabric. I think you can also use that material that you line your drawers with, like that sort of spongy material. Comes in a roll at the dollar store. All right, so I'm going to throw this next one with a little less explanation, and you guys can pop your comments in, but I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'll narrate it, but I'm going to move through the steps a little bit more fluidly. Like that demo I showed you was painfully slow. So I'm coning up. My hands are at 7 and 2. I'm coning down. My right hand is on top. My left hand is gently supporting. That was cone up and cone down number 1. Coning up again. Coning down. My elbows are tucked in to my side. And my hands are trying to touch always. The more my hands are connected, the more they're talking to each other. All right, so nothing is on center here yet, but it is getting closer. I'm going to do my little baby cone up, baby cone down. My left hand is angled down towards the center, and my right hand is only touching half of the top, but basically my right hand is in charge of the top and my left hand is in charge of the outside. And now I'm going to hug it in with some equal pressure from the outside and the top. So we're on center. I'm going to open. Got my little creeper finger, my helper hand, my elbows are touching my body. I need a little bit of water because it's dry in there. First, I'm dropping the hole. And now I'm going to open by pulling towards me. I feel a little air bubble in there. It's fine. I'm going to ignore it. Just means I didn't wedge my clay enough. This is the bottom. I'm going to clean up the bottom. All right, I'm going to pull up, but I'm going to slow down first. I'm going to slow my wheel down by about half. And I forgot to tell you guys this. Every time I pull up, I'm going to slow my wheel down just a tiny bit. So starting with 10 Mississippi. Compress the lip. Emma asks, what do I do if I get partway through a pull and it's starting to feel too dry? This definitely happens a lot. Can I stop, add water, restart, pull at the same spot? Yes, don't stop your wheel from moving though. I just want you to pull your hands away. So I'll model mid pull. I'm doing a pull. So I always rinse my hands between each pull, but it's sometimes we forget. And I rinse it up to my wrist because I want that water to be dripping down as I'm working, and it acts as like extra lubrication. So I'm going to model. So I'm mid pull and I'm like, oh, I need more water. Okay. I'm going to pause. I'm going to go get water. And then I'm going to come back to that spot and resume my pull. Absolutely. Great question. And another thing to keep in mind is you never want water left in the bottom of your pot when you're done, because it can just lead to uneven drying and cracks in the bottom of your pot. So I'm going to do one more pull on this bad boy, and then I might shape it a little bit. My goal is to get as much clay up from the bottom as I can because I want to use that clay, All right. So that's my basic cylinder. And, I have so little clay at the bottom. I probably can just clean that up right now with this rib. And let's see. One thing I like to do is just learn how to use a rib where you're just using the flat part to get a cylinder, right? Just that alone can be really powerful. I get all that slurry off, and it is just a little bit more of a clean exterior. Some people really love throwing rings, and I do too, but it's so funny. I actually think I love more a clean surface. So it really comes down to personal preference, but a rib will remove any kind of visual finger marks that you may have wanted on there. So another thing you can use the ribs for is from the inside. You can just come along and use your rib on the inside and get like a little bit more of a volume going on. You can use it on the outside to change that once you have, created it. Maybe you didn't love that shape. Maybe you want to make a different shape. So just try to play around. But I think cylinders are an admirable first project. So obviously, because I made a whole challenge, a 3-day challenge going, focused on creating better cylinders, because they just makes you make better pots. All right. So one thing I do love to do is if I'm gonna pull my wire through, I usually put this little mark underneath. It just creates this little undercut, and that makes it easier for my wire to travel under the whole thing. So I've got I'm going to tighten my wire as though I'm going to floss. So I'm going to shorten it, and I'm going to pull straight through. Now, because I have this bat, I don't need to touch it. I don't need to get my pot lifters out. I just need to get it, you know, off the bat. And then look how nice, you know, like luxurious. Like I don't have to deal with any kind of messing up of my pot, which is like really nice. So that is my cylinder. Yeah, hope that this was helpful for you. And I hope that walking through it, remember that centering takes way longer than you think. And it's super important. It's like almost like the cornerstone of the whole thing. And yeah, just take it step by step. I have those links that I sent in there, and hopefully if you came late, you might not be able to see the links. So I might copy and paste them for my folks who came after I posted them. And then I will say the thing that I'm really working on right now is a 8-week online course that will basically take you from a beginner to an intermediate. And so, yeah, I just really want everybody to know that that's on its way and we're working on it and that's happening. So, yeah, I'm so excited. Thanks, Monica. I'm so excited you could join us. You guys are great. Yeah, I'm having trouble copying and pasting. So let's see if I can do that one more time. Yep, there we go. So yeah, so thank you guys for coming. And if you join the Facebook group, you can ask me questions. You can also message me. I might not get back to you right away, but I'm available and via email. If you get my my email series of like saying like, hi, this is who I am. If you just hit reply, you'll get me. So thank you guys for joining. I'm excited for Karen's wheel to get delivered. Yay. She's doing all she can until then. That's pretty cool. And yeah, so let me know how things go. Post your results in the group. Tell us how it's going, and maybe we'll see you next time. All right. Take care, guys. Oh, Julia, thank you. I'm so glad. That's so good to hear. I know it's really hard. Sometimes we're aggressive. Anyway, that's what I'm here for. I'm so glad to hear it. All right, y'all, take care.